para mí es un placer daros la bienvenida a este High Media Trends 2012. Además, queremos daros las gracias porque sabemos que es complicado a veces venir o presentarse, organizarse una mañana para poder venir a un evento de estas características. Así que desde High Media os damos sinceramente las gracias. Empezamos a concebir o pensar en organizar un evento de este estilo ya por finales de enero. Y en aquel momento se nos planteó una reflexión al respecto de qué es lo que hace que un evento de estas características sea mejor o sea peor, determine la calidad de este tipo de eventos, ¿no? En esa reflexión nos surgieron 4 factores, 4 variables que determinamos como la temática. Pensamos en el enfoque de esa temática, la localización o el emplazamiento del evento y, evidentemente, los ponentes del evento. Respecto a la temática, y dado el sector en el que nos encontramos, pues el abanico de posibilidades temáticas era importante. Había muchas posibilidades. Así que decidimos centrarnos en 3, que son lo que nosotros consideramos el ADN o la genética de High Media. Los contenidos, la publicidad y los pagos. Los contenidos porque High Media es propietaria de diferentes portales en Internet, portales en diferentes temáticas que ya superan los 50 millones de usuarios únicos al mes en visitas, datos de un panel, y que nos hace estar dentro de los 100 primeros grupos editoriales de Internet en el mundo. La segunda pata, y la que posiblemente la mayoría de vosotros conoce, es la red publicitaria. Somos una red publicitaria integrada por portales tanto propios como de terceros, que en Europa ya supera 260 millones ahora mismo de usuarios únicos al mes y que nos hace estar entre las segundas 2, 3 primeras redes publicitarias europeas. Y la tercera, quizás el gran desconocido para la mayoría, es pagos. La unidad de pagos de High Media está integrada por 2 plataformas desarrolladas con tecnología propia interna de High Media, que son Allopass y HighPay, que fundamentalmente ofrecen a los propietarios de contenidos sistemas, soluciones de facturación, soluciones de billing, que van desde el SMS Premium, tarificación adicional, tarjeta de crédito o cualquier otra solución de pago que se pueda integrar. Y es la gran desconocida porque estas 2 plataformas que se generan aproximadamente, gestionan unos 10 millones de transacciones y facturan el 55% de la cifra de facturación del grupo High Media, que fueron 230 millones de euros este año pasado. Una vez centrada en la temática, contenidos, publicidad y pagos, pensamos en qué enfoque le podíamos dar a estas 3 temáticas. Entonces, el enfoque que planteamos, o la pregunta que se nos hizo, fue ¿qué les vamos a contar a un centenar de profesionales del sector que no sepan ya? La única respuesta que se nos planteó fue hablar de futuro, hablar de tendencias. De ahí el nombre. High Media Trends pretende hablar y presentemos qué tendencias, qué podemos esperar en el sector digital en los próximos 2, 3 a 4 años en España. La tercera variable o el tercer factor fue el emplazamiento. Estamos buscando muchísimos sitios y finalmente nos decidimos por este. Y pensamos en él porque creemos que aúna y sintetiza muy bien lo que es la filosofía o la idea del evento. Si queremos hablar de tendencia, queremos hablar de moda, queremos hablar de funcionalidad y de tecnología. Y creo que este emplazamiento lo presenta muy bien. Para la hora de los ponentes, ya voy a tener que decidirme, ya voy a tener que hacerlo a medida que vayamos empezando. Tenemos 3 ponentes que van a hablar cada uno de contenidos, publicidad y pagos. Y voy a empezar brevemente con el primero de ellos y a medida que vayan saliendo al estrado los siguientes, los presentaré. Solo un comentario. Está impuesto el hashtag de Twitter si alguien quiere hacer comentarios, preguntas a los propios ponentes o cualquier otro comentario o crítica constructiva, lo puede hacer por ahí. ¿Vale? Para la hora de contenidos, hicimos la reflexión de que los contenidos no solamente son importantes en Internet, sino que muy posiblemente sin contenidos no pensaríamos en Internet. Están absolutamente e íntimamente relacionados. Pero que también creemos que existe una gran incertidumbre todavía o dudas sobre cómo va a ser el futuro de la gestión de los contenidos, cómo se van a crear los contenidos cómo se van a distribuir los contenidos, dónde van a estar albergados los contenidos, cómo y desde dónde los vamos a consumir y, sobre todo, qué, cómo y cuánto vamos a pagar por ellos. Para eso, pues pensamos rápidamente en una persona que es absoluto especialista de este tema, que se llama Gerd Leonhard. Yo tuve la suerte de conocer a Gerd en FICOT 2008. Estaba también Rodolfo por allí, en las salas de ponentes. Y en FICOT 2008 él dio la conferencia plenaria y mi suerte fue que luego coincidí con él en la mesa de ponentes y comimos juntos y tuvimos una conversación de hora y pico en la que más que conversación, evidentemente, fue él habló de todo lo que sabe y yo escuché e intenté aprender lo que podía. Gerd es futurist, consejero delegado del Futures Agency, una consultora, una compañía que mantiene como clientes a grandes entidades de Internet. Y además de ser, aunque sea muy tópico lo que voy a decir, un ponente, un destacado ponente realmente en los mejores foros internacionales que podamos ver. Pasa la mitad del tiempo volando y la mitad del tiempo viajando. Gerd, thank you.
Hola. Buenos días. Always a great pleasure to be in Spain. My favorite place to speak for several reasons. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today. Before I get going, I want to find out who exactly is here. I mean, I can see who you are, but I would like to know what you do. So let me see who of you is in the media business in terms of running a newspaper, television station, content company. So who's a content company? Television, radio, records, God forbid, publishing. Okay, very good, okay. And who's in the media business as an agency? Agencies and, okay. And media buyers, media planners, well, it's the same as an agency, I suppose. Technology, who's in technology? Okay, and e-commerce, portals, shops and stuff? Okay, now here's a stupid question. Who's on Facebook? Ah, stupid question, you don't have to answer that. It's like saying who goes to the bathroom in the morning, So, today is a very interesting day. A big day for the future of the internet in many ways because today Facebook goes public. Okay, this should be a very interesting day for a lot of reasons. Americans, yesterday research shows that 61% of Americans would buy Facebook stock if they could. But if you ask people in Europe, most of us are saying, oh, it's kind of interesting and we use Facebook, but we're probably not going to buy the stock. It's a very interesting scenario. It's completely oversubscribed in America. You can't buy Facebook stock. In fact, all the banks are saying you can't get in anymore. This is the American piece of it, right? But for the internet, Facebook is a very, very big deal, right? For several reasons. I'll show you one of them. If this works, I'm going to try to use my iPhone here, mirror it through the thing here. I think I have to actually get out of this first. Okay, I'm trying a new thing here using the to project my iPhone into the projector, which sometimes works. There you are. Okay, so imagine using the Facebook app, which I have here now, one of my favorite TV stations in the world, Al Jazeera. Okay. Al Jazeera right now, this is a really big thing about Facebook. Facebook is not so cool on the mobile phone. This is a big problem. That's why I'm not going to buy the stock primarily. But Al Jazeera can be watched on Facebook. I mean, not on the mobile app for some reason, right? But you can watch Al Jazeera on Facebook. So Facebook is becoming cable television without the cable. They don't have any of the costs of the satellite or the cable infrastructure. They just go over the top, and they have 1 billion people in the audience. 1 billion people. It's the biggest country in the world after China. China's a little bit bigger. Okay? So Facebook is a broadcaster, and the program of Facebook, you guessed it, is you. We are the program of Facebook. I mean, that's why some people call Facebook a perpetual virtual reality show. Right? It's basically, we are filling it with thousands and millions of different programs. But now Al Jazeera is on Facebook. You can buy Delta Airlines tickets on Facebook. You can play Gagaville on Facebook or Farmville. But take it a step further, you can use an app like TED. You guys know TED.com, one of the most famous conferences for thinkers, right? And that actually works. You can play that on your mobile device, and you can download. Let's see if it works. You can actually download. Right? And you can watch this stuff at the bus stop. Now, TED.com has had 750 million views. I mean, how much would the Discovery Channel give to be in the same position than TED.com on the mobile device? I mean, clearly, this is going to be mind-boggling for a lot of reasons. Let me switch back to this in a second. So, okay. It's not flawless, but it works. Just really quick, you may wonder what a futurist does. I don't know if there's a name for this in Spain, in Spanish, futurologist, futurologo, or whatever. But this is basically my job, right? I listen. It's really quite simple. A Chinese saying says, if you want to know about the future, ask your children. Right? We all know about the future, but we don't have time to look because we're busy making money or, you know, having a nice comida or whatever, but we're very busy. Right? So we don't have time to look beyond the obvious. And not looking beyond the obvious is what usually kills us. Because we're busy just going and going and going, and then something comes up that was always there, we just didn't see it. So it's very important to have what's called foresights. And what we do is foresights and what we call 4 hears. You know, we like to hear what's happening. And we do this with 25 people around the world. We have clients from all over the place. Today, I'm trying a new thing called Cloud FTP. You may, if you see on your wireless networks, you see a network called Cloud FTP. That's my network. And this will be on until about 1 o'clock. You can go to Cloud FTP with any device, iPad, iPhone, Android, and just connect to the Cloud FTP network, open a browser, type in Cloud FTP, and download all my stuff today. As you see, if you're bored with my speech, you can download other things. Yeah. So my books are on there as well, and also the presentation from today is also on the Cloud FTP. But you can do that later in the break. Don't worry about that now. So what I'm looking to do today is to see if I can disturb your presence, what you're doing today. Because in the end, you know, it's especially straightforward. If we're not worried about the future, if we don't feel pain, we don't usually change anything. Because we're too complacent going along. And the other thing is that we may fall in love with something or somebody. Really, pain or love is what changes things, as I'm sure you're aware of. Jeff Bezos from Amazon fell in love with the idea of an electronic reader, the Kindle, which many of you may have, that nobody asked him for. It didn't exist. But he fell in love with this idea, and today the Kindle sells more books than print. So change really comes, you know, I'm sure you're facing this every day with your clients. You're saying, my God, you know, why don't you change and do something? Right? But it's about pain or love. That's really what it comes down to. So I want to give you some pain. Maybe I'll give you some love as well. But first of all, a short video. In the content industry, the media business, and of course our clients, sometimes they're very challenged to actually understand reality. Is this me or is it you? Okay, interesting. Okay, so our clients feel challenged with reality, just like this guy feels challenged. Take a look, see what he does. If you haven't noticed, you know, this is an iPad. You know, this guy thinks it's a chopping board because it looks very good, and you know, he doesn't understand what it does. And I can't tell you how many of my clients have this problem. They don't really know what it does. Huh? I mean, it's mind-boggling that many people talk about a future of the web and mobile and social, but they never tried it. It's like the Pope talking about sex. Yeah, it's a little bit like, you know, it's very hard to figure out what you're going to do about the future if you're not actually part of it. Right? I mean, think of this as a scenario that we're facing every single day. We have to get our clients inside of this first. This is Michio Kaku, who's a well-known futurist and physicist, talking about the future, what's happening on the internet.
The future. The internet is going to be in our contact lens. And when the internet is in our contact lens, you blink and you will go online. And if you meet somebody at a meeting, a conference, or a classroom, and you don't know who they are, your glasses will identify who they are and print out their biography in your contact lens, so you will always know who you are talking to. At a cocktail party, you will always know who to suck up to if you're looking for a job. And if the person is speaking Chinese, no problem. Your contact lens will translate what the person is saying, even as they speak.
He's talking about LinkedIn, right, basically. That's what we have on LinkedIn today. Imagine, I mean, clearly, You go to a meeting today, you probably checked me out on LinkedIn before you got here today. But when you go to a meeting, you say, let me check out this person. You click on the link and you look at your profile on LinkedIn, and then you say, oh, it could be interesting. But if the person on LinkedIn only has the top of the name and then ... and no friends, so then it's either Richard Branson, you know, he doesn't need any friends, or Obama, who's on LinkedIn, whatever, right? Doesn't need to write anything, or he doesn't want to talk to you. So it's a really, I mean, we're getting to that point where this kind of public thing is really, really a very important thing. And basically, you can say, can we have the monitor on the front as well? The future is already here. And this is the scary part. I mean, the future in Japan, if you go to a bar and you go into a dating bar, you can scan with a mobile phone, you can scan the person that you're dating, and you can see the social network profile superimposed over the page. You can see the Facebook profile or whatever they're using over there, you know, while you're talking, and you can decide if you're going to continue talking or move on to the next victim. You know, this is a very, very interesting scenario that we're seeing. The future is very, very much like very tangibly already here. We're seeing this graph, for example, in terms of how people are connecting. It's mind-boggling, the speed. I mean, look at the network access exploding, the bandwidth cost decreasing, CPU decreasing, storage decreasing. Very soon, we'll have 10 euro tablets for 10 euros. I mean, the iPad already costs only $62 to make. And we're paying 800 euros or whatever. But an Android tablet you can buy in India for $30. A really good one called the Arakash, very popular. So bottom line, 10 euros for an Android tablet is entirely possible. We're going in many ways, you know, about Moore's Law, you know, technology increasing. We're going beyond Moore's Law. I mean, the speed of data is just mind-boggling. As I'm sure you're aware of, media is going mobile. I mean, the mobile is huge in Spain, but it's also worldwide. It's becoming the #1 vehicle. I mean, look at this. Africa already has twice as many people on the mobile internet as we do. That's because they don't have stationary internet or computers. But basically, we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, 50 to 70% of all internet access on mobile devices. I mean, if you don't have a mobile strategy for your client, you're in deep trouble. Because basically, everything that we're going to do about booking stuff and doing our banking, talking to people, taking care of information is going to be on mobile devices of various sorts. For example, the idea of connecting your mobile device to television, which Apple TV does pretty well. But this will become a standard. So whatever you see here, you can project on any surface, not just your television, for very little money. And every phone company in the world is working on getting you online faster for less money so you can buy other stuff. I mean, it's a little bit like Google. Rising tide floats all boats. So basically, mobile is the big #1, and this is why Facebook, for example, is a little bit worrisome that they haven't spent much time on this, in my view, but except for buying, of course, Instagram. But if you're looking at what's happening here, this is a slide from Kleiner Perkins, going from roughly 1 billion smartphones to the future in the next 5 years, possibly 3 to 5 billion smartphones and feature phones. And even people in Brazil, for example, I do a lot of work in Brazil. If you have $5 extra in Brazil, and you have food and shelter and a bus ticket, you buy a mobile. It's right there, what's called the needs hierarchy is food, shelter, mobile phone. So the purpose of this, of course, the purpose of having a smartphone is not that you can do banking primarily or buy stuff, but it's about other people. And it's about content. It's about communication, but different kinds of communication. So lucky for us, you know, we're about 15 years after the birth of the commercial internet. We have just made 4 very big leaps. And Kleiner Perkins calls this SOLOMO, social, local, mobile. And add one more thing to it, social, local, mobile, and the cloud. The cloud meaning that all the stuff that we need and that we consume is moving to a place rather than a device or a DVD. So we're talking about movies, we're talking about music, Spotify, right? Cloud. You guys have Spotify here? Yeah, you have Spotify here. We'll talk more about that in a second. But so you have music in the cloud, you have education in the cloud. That's $1 trillion business, moving into the cloud. Governments around the world are now looking at buying hundreds of millions of reading devices and not print books. They will have savings of over $1 trillion if they don't have books. But guess what? Of course, the publishers are saying, you know, we're not so happy with that model. We'd like to continue selling books. But social, local, cloud, and then all of that is media. So no matter what part of the media business, whether you're in production or content creation or packaging or technology or advertising, this is a very good trend. There are a lot of issues here, of course, that we'll talk about in a second. But this, what we're seeing here is also that going direct is becoming a real option. I mean, if you talk to brands, the number one thing they want to do these days, they want to go direct to the consumers. BMW wants to reach consumers through movies and through apps and through Twitter and through internal websites and God knows what. They all want to go direct. Every writer wants to go direct. Every author writes a book. Every filmmaker wants to go on Kickstarter and take your money. My last book, The Future of Content, my 5th book, I wrote the book in about 100 hours because I had already written most of it. I published it on the Kindle in 24 hours, and a week later I sold 3,400 copies on the Kindle, which is not a lot, but I made more money than with my first book, which was a bestseller, selling over 100,000 copies in print. But this is not about money, it's about speed, it's about access. So brands go direct, artists go direct, producers go direct, which does not mean, of course, that we don't have big media companies. We will. But this will be a side-by-side effect. And Facebook will become a platform, for example, of going direct. You've heard about YouTube commissioning about $220 million worth of movies, production, film production. Facebook will very likely put together a fund for $1 billion for people to create movies commissioned by Facebook studios. But Facebook will not be a studio, it will just be a platform. The same goes for YouTube, of course, the same goes for Apple TV, the same goes for Netflix and Hulu and the BBC and so on, right? So commission of content will definitely explode there. French futurist Bruno Latour said a great thing, I think in 2009, change the instruments, and that's what we have now, and he will change the whole social theory that goes with them. For example, you see, of course, the behavior of people is completely different now. If there's something wrong, they're very likely to pull out their mobile phone and make a comment to somebody, whether it's TripAdvisor or Quip or Twitter. Right? We can all complain, we can comment, we have a lot more power as consumers. And we can, of course, be fools and show ourselves being drunk at a party as well. So the tools have changed and the social theory have changed. And if you're in the e-commerce business or the advertising business, the entire way that we buy and sell is changing. We're not going to buy anything from you just because you're the only thing I can buy or the only thing I can watch. For example, airlines have really suffered from this. The only way to go from one place to the other was a long time was a certain airline that would go there and they would charge 1,000 euros. Well, now we have 15 airlines. The price is down and we can compare all of them on a website like Hipmunk or Expedia. And we can use an app like Flight Tracker, and we can be at the gate looking at our flight, and we know more about the flight than the woman who's at the gate, right? Because we have more information. So it's very empowering for the consumer. But in terms of getting connected, I mean, imagine a device like this, a $10 device. This is the XO from the one laptop per child. Imagine this kind of device in the hands of 5 billion people. That's what we're going to have in less than 5 years. For a lot of reasons. This will create a huge amount of opportunities and problems. First time ever problems. I work a lot in Indonesia, and the government is putting 16,457 islands online. And these are islands that are going to be connected with LTE and 4G. And these people never had television or radio before. Imagine now you can use a mobile phone and watch YouTube. What does that do to their culture, their religion? It's going to be quite confusing for a lot of people what you see there and what you can do there. And also politics are changing completely. I mean, every day there's somebody taking a political action of some sort, you know, Greenpeace against Volkswagen and Iraq and what have you. Every day there's some sort of activity happening through social networks. So politics is really going upside down. In 2017, we'll have 5 billion people connected, roughly. 75%, I think, will be on the mobile internet. Mobile only, to a large degree. They use the mobile, and when they get home, they project into a larger screen. And of course, you'll be able to read magazines. Like there's The Economist, which is a great app. That's the only app I buy as a newspaper or as a magazine for only one feature, that it can read to me. So when I drive, I can have it. I mean, it's a very stupid feature, but it works, right? I mean, think about all the stuff that's happening with Google Play and the Apple Cloud and Twitter. I mean, Twitter becomes the next CNN. It's mind-boggling about speed. In America, they call Twitter TNN, Twitter News Network. I mean, this is the next thing that's coming after Facebook in terms of the connection there. So today, our friend Mark, roughly 26 billion minutes spent per day on Facebook. And it's all about this, all about our data. This is the scary part and the good part. I mean, we have given Facebook so much data that they can use a very simple profiling engine, which the FBI has been doing for a long time with Facebook, by the way. But anybody can do it, really. It's called data mining. Right? You can use tools, and you can find out if I'm likely to vote for the Green Party or the Conservatives using my Facebook profile. You can also predict if I'm going to go to a certain place within the next year using the data from Facebook and my friends who are talking about things and which pages I've liked. I mean, clearly, if I've liked 10 places in Bali, then it's quite clear that I'm looking to go. So it's not rocket science, right? But this is really fantastic because for advertisers, nothing better than this because these profiles are deep and they're fairly real. And they're not public. They're behind the wall. So very powerful stuff. I mean, if you're looking at this, the biggest country in the world, the fact that they are broadcaster, they're cable TV without the cable, they can present content, they'll reinvent advertising. Google advertising substantially, window is closing. Because advertising is about disruption and about, the data isn't good enough. They're trying to fix that, of course. Data mining, mobile sharing, and Facebook already makes about 8% of the money with digital payments. Now imagine if you're a bank. The fear of God is rising when you think about digital currency. Digital money, Bitcoin, Kachingo, Flatter, Facebook credits. Why do we need credit cards? We don't need credit cards. I mean, the number on the credit card could be in my mobile phone. We don't need plastic to carry a number. So think about what the banks think about this. I mean, this is basically coming. They know it's coming. It's a lot like the record companies. They're looking at the cloud, the music cloud, and saying, oh, this is not good because it makes the access equal. It changes our business model. So a lot of interesting things about Facebook, but here's why I'm not buying the stock today, if I could. Here's our friend Julian from WikiLeaks, or friend or foe, depends on how you look at it. He says, I give private information on corporations to you for free. I am the villain, the bad guy. And Mark says, I give your private information to corporations for money. I am the man of the year. It's very hard to figure out what's worse. And the key question is Facebook actually going to care about who we are and what we want? Or will they just totally maximize their profit in whichever way they can, not give a shit about us? Right? That would obviously kill them. It'd be the next MySpace. Right? That question is open. If that question wasn't open, I'd be a buyer. And I could figure out how they're going to use this. But how will humans and machines, data is, after all, is a machine, is algorithms. Right? How will they interact in the future? This is a key question for advertising. Because if you don't get data from people, you can't show what they may want to see. You can't make a match. It's like meeting somebody with a paper bag over their head. You can't identify who they are. How will that happen? You know a system called Cloud. It's a rating system, Cloud or peer index. You put in your Twitter name, it's K-L-O-U-T. You put your Twitter name, and Cloud says how influential you are, using an algorithm that takes stuff from Twitter. So if you go to Las Vegas, you go to the Palms Hotel, they check you out on Twitter before you get there, and if you reach a certain Cloud score above 50, you get a free suite, upgrade to a suite. Right? Because supposedly, you are influential, or meaning, whatever that is. Now, you could say that is really bizarre, because who makes that algorithm? Is it the government, or is it the Palms Hotel? I don't know. But machines and humans interacting is a major topic for the future, clearly, because that's going to happen. And we are already paying with our data. I mean, if you if you think about the most common way to pay today is paying with attention. It's what I call paying with attention. So rather than paying with money, we find a way to give our attention to somebody else, and then they pay for us. That's called advertising, getting attention. And most of you are in that business, I gather. You know, this is really quite interesting. Global advertising is $560 billion a year. And then marketing and public relations and other assorted yelling is $1 trillion. Totally, it's $1 trillion spent on reaching us. So these companies have used that data to build a business on our attention, our data. LinkedIn, for example, is free. Let me ask who here is actually paying for LinkedIn, paying to use LinkedIn. Okay, that equals a percentage. Roughly, it's about 2 or 3% of people. But last year, LinkedIn made $520 million. It's $20 per person who wants to use LinkedIn for more emailing. But we make LinkedIn because we give our data. We make Skype because we connect with each other, and then it's free phone calls for the other guys. Right? It's a peer-to-peer system. So the world is moving to a connection of peer-to-peer using these kind of things, and that becomes a standard. And basically, any media company, any brand that doesn't see how this works is losing a piece of the value. I'll talk more about this in a second. So major issue is, of course, that many of us are starting to feel like we're bleeding data. You know, we are publishing things that we may not want later. And this is a big debate, of course, of Facebook. And then sometimes we feel like people are always, you know, we want them to just shut up, you know. I mean, if you're, I'm 51, so if you're not 14, you know, sometimes you want people to shut up and just say something meaningful for a change. Right? So the issue of bleeding data and the noise, right, that has to really be looked at. Twitter, for example, is a powerful tool, but the noise, you know, the noise is just, I mean, I found a way to deal with the noise because I wanted to find a way, but it's certainly not easy, right? I mean, Flipboard and those kind of tools are great for that, but. So the question is, you know what happened with BP a couple of years ago, right? It's a leak. Now, imagine the same thing happened with Facebook, and Facebook has a leak, and that leak includes you. All of your private conversations and chats. Right? Bottom line is, you can't assume that whatever you do on Facebook is closed. It's actually not. It's supposed to be, but it will leak. I mean, that is the nature of what they're doing there. Right? So I went, 3 weeks ago, I erased 12 hours worth of stuff on Facebook. But I'm not sure that it's actually erased. You know, that's a different question. Right? But the question is, will Facebook be accountable for the data? If they haven't solved that problem, they won't be successful. This is the main issue, of course, also for Google. But Google is working very hard on this. So the question you can say, you know, this has become an operating mantra for lots of e-commerce and web companies. It's free, but they sell your information. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as the deal is clear. I mean, for example, if I invite you to my house, I'm saying, let's have dinner. But I'm not telling you that I'm planning to pitch you a way to invest in my company. Right? You will feel a little bit strange because you were expecting a social thing, but I'm pitching you to invest in my company. Right? I have somewhat used your information in a different way that you didn't expect. So this is really about trust. And the question is it a Faustian deal? You know, Faust, the German story about doing a deal with the devil. Is this a deal with the devil? I don't think it has to be, but it could be. So we have to keep a very good eye on this. Here's a question the Wall Street Journal asked people a couple of weeks ago if there's a button on a web browser that says do not track. So you can hit the button and then the web browser does not provide anyone with any information about you. And that's supposed to become a law in America. If this do not track button happens, the Wall Street Journal asked people, would you use it? And almost 90% of people said they would use the do not track button. Now clearly, if this button becomes reality, the advertising on the web is dead. I mean, if we are not tracked and if there's no data, how are we going to talk to them? How are we going to pitch those people? We're going to sell our stuff there. So the engine of content, you know, 70% of the content industry is financed by advertising. And that is not going to change. So that is a problem that has to be solved clearly. The other thing that has to be solved is that, you know, walled gardens like Facebook or, you know, iTunes, or what used to be Nintendo, or, you know, Blu-ray DVD, or whatever they call it now. Walled gardens can be interesting, but they won't last. Because walled gardens have huge disadvantages. Once you're inside, it's beautiful, but you always have a hurdle. You're hitting some sort of wall, and then it becomes uncomfortable. Right? So we're now in a shifting. We're going to see Facebook become entirely open, more or less, in the next 3 to 5 years as well. Because Facebook is an operating system. I don't want to talk about Facebook the whole time, but anyway, it's about to become more than a game, right? From the Facebook version, and in a way, we're sitting here now and saying, you know, we're looking at ourselves being grilled in the Facebook oven. Right. Again, don't get me wrong, I probably would buy it if I had lots of money to spend, but I got burned on Nokia, so I'm not buying any of that. So anyway, so now on the internet, we are the show. This is the interesting part. We are actually the show. We're the stars of the internet, the micro stars. Even if you Twitter once a month, even if you only write one review, you put 1 star on TripAdvisor, so we are creating that what's called meta content. And nobody can get around that fact that consumers are now doing all these things. So for example, in the future, we're going to talk to our television. And this already works. I've tried it many times. It works great. But it's a little bit geeky. In the next year or two, every TV company is rolling out televisions. Like Samsung has a television that you can talk to, that you can use gestures. So you can sit there and you can play like Kinect. Right? This will become normal. So my mother can sit there and talk and say to the television, Colombo, please, and it will pull up, you know. Now, he's dead now, so you know, it's going to pull him up from heaven, I guess. And then she says, this show sucks, television, right? Like we've seen in the movies. And you can contribute to metadata with talking. Imagine what that will do for advertising. Imagine if your ad can be instantly rating people saying, oh, up or down, just by motion sensor, right? You'll get 1 billion people to say up or down. Right? Or talk about whether you say the truth or not. I mean, this is going to be quite mind-boggling. And the European Commissioner has already said in 2009, personal data is the new oil of the internet. And many people have said it before me, but I like to use the word data is the new oil. So if you're in the business of media, communications, advertising, public relations, it's all about that. And if you just Google data as the new oil and Gerd, you'll find lots of stories that I've written about this. Literally, you know, as you know, of course, the oil industry has fought many wars about oil. And we're now about to enter the wars of data. Hopefully not with dead people, but maybe with dead companies. Yeah, because basically oil, you know, data is becoming a huge asset worth trillions of dollars. Media has become a lot more about us, so that we are also more in charge. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. We've moved from the centralized idea of media and companies to decentralized. This is not just for media, but also for politics, for example. There isn't a single politician who wants to be elected that isn't going to use what's called social media, but I call it just a connected society, right? In some way or the other. There's a great report from Ryko in The Economist called Agent of Change, and you can download that from the internet. Just put in Ryko, R-I-C-O-H, and Agent of Change. It's an 80-page report. I definitely recommend it. It's free. And they're talking about all the disruptors that are happening. Cheap smartphones for all. This is number 1. And if you don't get it yet, spend 4 weeks without your computer. Just use a smartphone. I'm trying to get all my clients to do that. Say, guys, all of the executives, the board members, everyone, let's use only our mobile phones for 2 weeks. And see how that works. Do your banking, do your communications, speak to order food, you know, whatever you want to do, get involved. And then you find out actually what's happening is that the phone is taken over from computers. So desktops are becoming irrelevant as a tool of communication, but is a tool of work. That's really quite different. Business-oriented social networks, data, cloud computing, 3D augmented reality, and so on. You'll hear more about that stuff today. Sounds very geeky. For example, when we talk about augmented reality, it sounds like Star Trek. But imagine that, you know, only 10 years ago, the idea of going to Mount Everest and recording a YouTube video. I did it last week. No, just kidding. I wasn't there. But you can do that. You can make a YouTube video on the top of Mount Everest. And that was total fiction just 10 years ago. I mean, imagine the technology moves so quickly. Now, augmented reality will become a standard. We'll go to a museum and hold up the phone. It will tell us the story of the, we don't need the museum guide anymore. It will tell us the story of the image, of the picture. So we talked about this a lot when I was, I used to be a musician and producer, and then I switched to doing internet stuff. We talked about this in the late 90s. This is why we invested so much money in internet products, saying that we have convergence. And it was way too early, but now we have it. And it's bigger than ever, right? Basically, convergence of search and social. Ask yourself what's more important. That you're going to find something that's objectively linked with references of algorithms, or that your friends have recommended or endorsed? I mean, the answer is clear. Our social network will always beat statistics. Television and the internet is completely convergent. If it wasn't for the internet taking over television, television would be dead. This is great news for the television people. It's not good news for record people or music people, for example. But this convergence has a huge amount of potential commercially and also in terms of innovation, of course. And now the next thing is that telecoms, mobile operators and ISPs, they are looking at media, and they're saying, guys, all this stuff is happening on top of what we do, the network. So if we don't become part of media, if we don't get involved with social media and apps and transactions and payments, we're dead. Because people are going to use our network, and they pay us for that, but everybody makes the money on top. So now you're going to see what's called telemedia, the telecom companies getting into your turf. And in fact, those will be the partners for you of the future. So we have to get away from this kind of thinking. This is a real problem, especially for big companies. We all live in silos. There's the tech guys over here, there's the hardware people, there's the content people. We don't talk to them. They run their own little worlds. Disney is in their own little world. That isn't going to work in the future, because the consumer doesn't think of it the same way. The consumer thinks if they can get online with their mobile phone using Vodafone or Telefonica, that YouTube is free and music is free, and so on, right? It's basically a consequence of this silo. So the idea of a silo is game over. If you work for a company where you're dealing with silos, you should either quit or change it, because that company is going to die. Right? Because you can see very straightforwardly, for example, car companies, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, they're investing in self-driving cars, cars without a driver. They're investing in electric cars, they're investing in wind turbines for wind energy, and they're investing in virtual transportation, traveling without traveling the body. That's clearly, it's a, right? That is what's going to happen. Television. I do a lot of work in the television business. I'm really excited about television because television, as we know it, is finished. Because the very word suggests something very simple, is that we can watch remotely something that somebody else puts on. We can still do that, of course, but now television is essentially becoming important because it converges with the internet. In America, 100,000 people a month are dropping the internet connection. I mean, the cable TV, sorry, and using internet instead. I mean, why would you pay $100 a month for cable TV if all you ever watch is the news and maybe one sports game? Okay. So here comes this app from this guy called Barry Diller, who you may know from the past, an app called Aereo.
There's TV. It comes in over the air through an antenna, dish, or cable, and then there's internet, wherever and whenever we want. Sure, it's got video, but it's not TV. The real live 24/7 TV we know and love, it's not on the internet, until now. Now there's Aereo, a new platform for bringing live broadcast TV to the internet, wherever and whenever we want it. Here's how it works. Anyone can watch live broadcast TV for free off the air with an antenna. Aereo has taken that antenna and made it unbelievably small, small enough that hundreds of thousands can fit in a single room, where you can access them from the internet and watch live broadcast TV as it airs.
You don't need a television to watch internet. You don't need a television to watch television programs. You can do that in all different ways now. And of course, the first thing that happens here is a lawsuit, right? Because the television companies and the studios are saying, wait a minute, you can't do this. So this is going to go to Supreme Court just like cable TV originally went to Supreme Court. Interesting story there. So television is interesting. Now we have this thing called social TV. You guys familiar with this word, I hope? It's basically the connection of television with social media. Worldwide, about 43% of people who watch television in developed countries, they're using a second device, iPhone, iPad, whatever, mobile device, while they're watching television. I'm sure you do the same. So basically what people do here, they talk about the TV show, or if it's boring, they talk about something else. But now people are bringing up apps. And these apps can read what you're watching. It's actually very simple to do. So the app does a sound scan of the TV show, and then the app identifies the TV show. It's actually quite simple. And then the app says, you know what? There's another 4,000 people, friends of yours on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, that are also watching the show. You want to talk to them. So you can talk about the TV show while you're watching. And now the people who run the TV show, they can say, you know, at this moment in this TV show, let's say CIS or whatever, they can say, this car, if you like this car, you can click this button to get information on the car that's just driving down the road in the movie or the TV show. Social commerce. And then people have conversations about the car. This is not really possible on television because it would destroy our user experience. But if you're good at multitasking, which most of us are not, but this is just 2 tasks, so it's okay. Right? Social television is a huge thing. Because all of a sudden, you can, for example, imagine you can have your own advertising independently from what's on television, but with the TV show. And you don't have to ask for permission. That's the other part. Because the data is public. So now every screen is becoming some kind of connected TV. This is good news and bad news because there is this thing called screen addiction. I'm sure you're familiar with this. You know, when you're always sitting down and doing these things, you can never actually stop, or you always have to keep your ringer on, you know, things like that. So every screen is becoming a connected device that we get into. And Kevin Kelly, who's the co-founder of Wired, he says we're moving into a society of visuality, going from orality, speaking, literacy, writing, to images. Bad part is I'm not sure if we're going to lose the writing, but clearly if I can speak and then it becomes written, then the reason for me to write well is in question. Very scary idea that you don't have to learn languages because the computer can translate, which is also a possibility now. So he talks about visuality, but basically what this means, Kevin Kelly calls this screening instead of viewing. Right? Everything is about screens and how people interact. I mean, this is, of course, good news if you're in the business of media and content, because screens are the vehicle for this. Now we have kids, of course, being entirely familiar with how tablet devices work. Tablets are, in fact, great for young kids if you let them, and old people, if they work. In many cases, you know, it's really quite interesting how quickly kids pick up on this very natural, it's called natural user interface, the NUI, and not the GUI. And then you have kids who are used to this and see what they do when they see a magazine, right? They're trying to zoom the page in a magazine, right? Right? Because now they're basically saying, you know, this is broken, right? Now here's a question I want to ask you, okay? If it can't be touched, if it can't be zoomed, will it still matter? I mean, if you're in media today, you have to answer this question. If I can't be zoomed, if I can't be found, maybe I don't matter, because people won't even understand how it works. I think that's obviously not true for different ages, you know. But so Kevin Kelly also talks about how we used to be people of the print. This was very good for newspapers, because the only way to really, you know, get information is to have it shipped to you, or you sit in the airplane and read, you know. I still like to do that, but that's going to be economically a disaster. I mean, clearly 98% of that stuff is thrown away, not even recycled in many places. 400,000 trees a day. Of course, you could argue then that Kindle also costs trees indirectly. But we're becoming people of the cloud. Do we really need paper? My view is that if you're in the newspaper business, you better dump paper as quickly as possible, because that's weighing you down to go into the future. In fact, many of my clients are thinking about giving presents to their subscribers to give them a reading device in order not to read the paper. But I think you will still have a good place for paper. For example, on-demand printing will be big. So when you get on the airplane and you get your boarding pass, you can also get your custom-printed New York Times. That's printing with the boarding pass. That's already possible. It's just, logistically speaking, a little more difficult. And you have Spotify in this country, which I really like, Spotify, the music service. Very soon we'll have Spotify for books. So you pay €5, or rather, Telefonica pays €5, and you use their SIM card, and you have unlimited business books. That's going to happen. It's good for us. I mean, it's great for students, for example. Why would you buy all these books? You don't never read them again. Right? Education is content. Now you have hundreds of companies, including this site, called the Khan Academy, which is free. This is where I send my kids to do math lessons. You can go there and say, show me algorithm, whatever the problem is, and I'll have a great video to educate you in this. So education is becoming content as well. If you're in the business of content, education is a huge opportunity, because clearly government money goes in there. Education is increasing as a mission, at least in Europe. In America, it's decreasing for some reason. But in general, content is becoming something that we access. Think about this for a second. When if you give your kids a CD for Christmas, they're going to think you've gone crazy. A DVD, maybe, probably not. What do they really want? Well, they want a cool device to play it on. It's access now. It's all about access. Music, television, games, apps. Access, not ownership. And this is really good for all of us because it's cheaper, distribution is cheaper, advertising can be better in there, and advertising, in fact, is also becoming content. You see that here with music, for example, in America, iTunes sales are completely flat, and streaming stuff is up. The Kindle is a huge resource for people. And, for example, in digital music, you see the end of distribution as a gatekeeper. For many media companies, if they are more concerned about control than about reinventing, they will die. Because basically what they're doing is they're saying to us, you can't do this because it's not part of the plan. And many of us are saying, you know what, we don't like you, we go somewhere else. I mean, in Spain, this is very dramatic, clearly. People download a lot of stuff for free because there is no alternative to getting it in some other way that doesn't cost way too much, where you have to buy very expensive equipment. So in a society, you have to ask the question, are we going to either be a pirate or a prisoner? That's not a very good alternative. So in my view, the government should think about that rather than thinking about laws to prevent people from using the internet. Anyway, my good friend Ross Dawson is a futurist. He says basically what's happening in news media, and this is really happening in all media, is rather than focus on selling the printed copy of news and advertising, we're now looking at like 100 different values that are important to different people. And that includes basically, it's fragmentation. So if you're in the newspaper business, you may say, my newspaper, say The Economist, we're very good at filtering. We have high reputation. Our site is designed well. We have great insights, analysis. You can't have all of these. But basically, at one point, you just decide that the value is not in the zeros and ones in the download or the content. The value is created around the content, in all the extras. Why do I buy the Economist app? Because it speaks to me while I'm driving. The content I can read somewhere else. This is why I will never subscribe to the New York Times for $300 a year. Because I don't see those values there that compel me to put up $300. Not because I'm lazy, I don't want to spend the money. Right? So it's not about selling units, but it's about selling a myriad of things, packaging, curation. So this is very important, of course, because when that happens, if you're in the advertising or marketing business, when that happens, you create real context. It becomes really interesting and meaningful. Quickly about piracy. Fred Wilson, investor in Twitter, about to become very rich. He says, restricting access to content is a bad business model in the age of a global network that costs nothing to distribute on. You may not like this, because clearly distribution made lots of money. But this is like the dinosaurs saying they don't like the Ice Age. It's just here. I mean, distribution is here. We have the internet. If you don't want the internet to be a copy machine, you have to move to China. And even in China, it's not working. So we have to think of new business models, and we have to go basically from this idea of the old order, the previous media, to the pirate world. This is why you see in Europe the rise of the pirate party, because they're coming from that end of it. But the new order is to make it work. I mean, what's much more important than talk about all these principles that are from 50 years ago, is talking about how we can make the new order that generates revenues. So that's basically a key thing. And then, we're living in a world now, our kids live in this world that everything that's fun on the internet is probably not legal. Right? Look at music or films. I mean, there's over 1,000 websites where you can stream movies for free. Thousands. And YouTube is the place where all the kids get their music. When you go to a party today, YouTube is the jukebox. Even in bars, YouTube is the jukebox. But is YouTube legal? Not really, because it hasn't actually gotten a license for all of the pieces. It's very complicated. But YouTube is so big, we can't shut them down, because everybody is using it. So we're living in a world where the illegal stuff is the most popular, to a large degree. So, content companies, media companies are asking me these questions all the time. Should we control consumption, make content unavailable, enforce the payment? I mean, again, if you work for a company like this, time to move on. This is like a horseshoe maker, that makes the horseshoes for the horses. When the train came along, they didn't like the trains because people were not using horses. You can't say, well, let's not have trains because we like horses. Basically, it is not going to happen. We have this, and we have to put up with it. And so bizarre choices, as I was saying earlier, we either are a pirate, in many cases, taking stuff that we shouldn't take, or we're a prisoner, for example, of iTunes. I mean, interesting enough, I'm a willing prisoner of iTunes, because I don't care if it costs €5 or so for a movie, but if I fall asleep watching the movie and the next day I want to continue, iTunes says to me, you've gone beyond the 24-hour rental period. I'm like, what? You must be mad. Right? Why? There's no reason in the world why this would be the case, right? Except for punishing people who do the right thing. And then you turn around and you try to make new laws to get people not to go on the internet. Right? So, bizarre choices. Laws like SOPA, ACTA, PIPA, all the American laws that people are thinking about the internet, there's basically, Peter Drucker said, there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. So we have to really think about alternative. Here's an alternative. Probably the most important business model in a digital society is about free stuff. And this has always been a powerful business model, of course. But now on the internet, doing something for free, or what I call feels like free, which is actually much better. Right? This means, for example, imagine Spotify was free in the sense of Telefonica or another mobile phone company saying, we'll put Spotify inside. When you buy the SIM card or the DSL, it's included. But you can only keep 100 songs or so on your mobile device. You can't keep 2,000. So it's good enough. And you can stream at home. And they would pay for it, which they're going to do, clearly. Because when you're a happy customer, you keep the SIM card. They save a boatload of money by you not leaving. And they can sell ads to you within the app. They could easily generate 2 or 3 euros a month from that. But the record companies won't allow Spotify to do this, because we're stupid enough to buy CDs. Not in this country, thankfully. In other countries like Switzerland. So imagine if Spotify was free, how many people would, once they're inside of Spotify, I mean, you've tried Spotify, so it basically works quite nicely. Right? Once you're inside of Spotify, would you give another 5 euros to unlock other features, for example, high definition classical music, live jazz concerts, the ability to have 3,000 songs offline? Many people would do this, and they would convert very quickly. I think the conversion rate, for example, in gaming, like World of Warcraft and so, it goes on between 25 and 75%. And the secret really is simple. You give away something that looks like it's free, and it's high value, and you get people addicted. Okay? You get people to use your service because it's free, and then you upsell them. It's not a secret. I'll show you how that works on Spotify real quick so you know what that does. So, I mean, I have my reservations about Spotify, but okay, here's the key feature of Spotify, okay? I can get free music anywhere on the internet. Grooveshark, YouTube, I don't need to pay. But I'm paying 10 euros, and I'm only paying 10 euros because of these guys. These are my Facebook friends with their playlists. Okay? I connected Spotify and Facebook. And I do the same for books and television, right? So if this guy here, let's see, Alpesh Doshi, he's a venture capitalist. Okay, I can look at his top tracks, and I can subscribe to them. Currently, it's not taking a while to load here. Pick somebody else. So I look at their playlist and basically saying, okay, these guys are interesting. This is the guy from TypePad. I'm going to look at his top lists, and I like his taste. I subscribe to his songs. Right? That's how I find out what I like. I mean, the possibility of going back and looking at my playlists, you know, I have lots of playlists, and they're downloading right now, as you can see. And you can see how bad taste I have. But, you know, this is cool to have the music, but what's even cooler is the connection with other people who can tell me what to listen to. And this is clearly going to be the future, I think, for a lot of us to look at those added values. So back to this for a second here. So LinkedIn, Skype, Google, Amazon, Dropbox. You guys use Dropbox, I'm sure. Everybody does, Evernote. What do they have in common? They use freemium. If LinkedIn had asked you to sign up for money, you would say, you know, this is why. You don't see the value until you're inside. So, I mean, clearly LinkedIn now is converting quite nicely with $500 million a month and becoming the human resources capital of the world, basically, the HR pool of the companies. Right? So it's clearly there, you know, the idea of creating what's called new generatives, upselling, added values. So the media business will go in this direction quite clearly. A couple examples, the Björk app. Björk sold an app for 12 euros. It's just like a CD, but it's an app. Right? That's an added value because it's all in one place. You can watch the Met live from a theater, streaming anywhere in the world. You go there for $10, you can watch the opera live. That's an upselling from this free streaming on their website. And here's a whole list. I mean, you're going to download the PDF afterwards. Just check out Kevin Kelly and New Generatives, and you get a whole list. Very powerful stuff. So how much more time do I have? 2 hours? Huh? No? Just let me know what you want. OK, real quick on the paywall. This is an important topic. If people put media properties behind paywalls too early, advertising and marketing that we do is going to die. Because we can't have the same traffic and weed out 95% of people to go behind the wall. You have to decide, do you want the ads or do you want subscription money? And as I said before, you know, 70% of global content has, to a large degree, been funded by advertising. Is that going to change on the internet? No. The opposite is true, because the internet is a giant data box. As long as we can figure out what to do about privacy and not to hurt people by using their data, then the match is really quite clear. But if we do this, we say to the reader, I'll show an example in a second, you can't go inside unless you make a payment. If I do that too early, about 98% of people leave and they never come back. Okay? If I do this, and I say, you know what, you can get X, Y, Z, and I gradually build a scheme of where they eventually get convinced to buy, right, to buy in. I get almost all of them. So the problem is not the pay, it's the wall. And in some cases, that means this could be a very low wall. For example, the Wall Street Journal has the paywall here. And there's no recipe for that. But here's an example, right? The New York Times. In their wisdom, this is the most famous newspaper in the world with, admittedly, probably the best writers in the world. There's no criticism on the New York Times in terms of quality or truth, for that matter, right? Or their writers or anything. It's not about that. You go to their website, they put a cookie, and now it used to be 20 times. Now it's 10 times. And after you go 10 times, they say, you know what? You've come 10 times. Pay up. I said, OK, oh, shit, OK, I'll have to pay. So I click through, and then it says, it's $5.95 a week. to read the New York Times, dollars. It's like, what do you mean? I've come here 10 times, and you want $300 a year. So the message is, thanks for your interest. Now go away. And it's interesting that 850,000 people have done this. Because they love the New York Times and they do whatever. I mean, the New York Times has love. Right? They're like Apple. In America, the New York Times is God. I mean, you pay just to help them. So you get 800,000 people. But they have 35 million people coming to their webpage a month. They're the oldest newspaper in the world. And how many of those people will renew next year for $300 in the time of economic crisis? When they can read all the news on Twitter. And they take the cookie out from their browser, and they can read another 10 times. It's an aberration, right? It's not a good recipe. It may work for them. I hope it does. But don't copy this. Most of the time, it won't work, because here's the reality. As GigaOM has shown, advertisers need large audiences. Look what happened to the New York Times. This is a graph from this year. GigaOM, circulation up, as we've just seen. Advertising revenue, death. You're going to live on that recipe? Good luck. You may still survive for other reasons. But that's obviously not going to work. I mean, in America, we have a service called Netflix. And it's very important. It's very successful selling subscription television for $10 a month. You can watch anything you want. 25 million people have subscribed. So here's the lesson for the content industry. It's about ease of use. It's about value. It's about making it easy. And it's about a fair deal. And that's when people buy. It's really quite simple. It's not that we're evil and we don't want to buy. OK, I need to jump ahead a little bit. I was obviously planning to be here for the rest of the week with you. So a quick lesson here. If you're in the newspaper business, please dump paper. You can use paper for special occasions. Why do we need this? I mean, 10 years, we'll laugh about this. I mean, clearly, we're going to have all kinds of things reading in all different ways, and entirely different, right, in most, but in all cases. And now you can see what the same is happening with advertising. In America, 42% decrease of advertising revenue in newspapers. I mean, in Spain, I don't know, it's something like 28% already, something like that. Advertising is going digital at a mind-boggling speed. But here's the thing, as we were discussing this whole week on various other events, you have to reinvent advertising for digital. The current advertising models of interruption and pop-ups and CPMs, that's not going to work, because it's not really engaging. Right? If we're looking at this, the growth, 17.5% growth of digital advertising compared to the others. This is largely a cultural question. How quick will people change to devices? How quick will my mother go away from reading the newspaper to reading a tablet? The answer is when she doesn't know it's a tablet. She thinks it's the newspaper, just like she thinks the iPad is television. Advertising, buying attention will become 95% accurate. Remember the old saying about 50% of the advertising is wasted, you don't know which, so you do it anyway? That's how television and print made lots of money, because you did it anyway. And now the same thing is going to happen on Facebook. Facebook goes public. The advertisers will say, we don't really know if it's wasted, but it seems good. Well, they put their money into Facebook. It will be the same thing. You don't know what's wasted. But in the near future, we're going to see 95% accuracy, and we'll only pay if we have results. Right? We'll pay for attention. If we don't get attention, we won't pay. I mean, we're talking about $200 billion shifting. This is a huge slice of, lots of innovation going into this. So brief summary here. Sorry about this, but I better go ahead a little bit. We're going to take some questions, through Twitter also sometime later today, hopefully. So we're switching to a society of visuality. If you don't live in this world, you don't know what I'm talking about, you're in trouble. You got to get with it right now, because that's what's happening. We're moving to a society of visual input, and I think what's going to happen is we're also going to amplify the fact that because we want to be in solitude and actually get inside of something, we'll also read more. Because clearly, as we're always looking at screens, we're going to eventually get tired of the constant action. We want to get inside of one story and get immersive, like movies and good books. That's going to happen as well. Solo-mo and the cloud, right? Social, local, mobile, and the cloud. That's the future. That's right there. That's the paradigm for the future. Any company that goes in this direction is going to do great, because that's where we're going. The concept of advertising as disruption is disrupted. That's basically, if you're in the business of disruption because you want to pitch some product, not going to work. Advertising is now in the business of engagement. It always has been. It's just we haven't noticed because we were successful disrupting people and it made lots of money. But data are bleeding, right? We have to, if you're in the business of data, advertising, customers, you have to be very careful of what you do with the data and how. This is the prime thing. If people stop trusting you, you're dead. This may be the Facebook problem. You know, we'll watch. We'll sit and watch. The media is us. We are the content of media. Social TV, the connection of the web and television. Access, not ownership. We won't need to own media or education or our health records in the future because we can get to them through the cloud. The new generatives, trying to find other ways, smarter ways to get people to see the value. This is not difficult. I mean, we're spending, the average iPhone user spends $4.80 a month on apps. That's content. I mean, clearly, that is a business model for the future. Freemium. If you can make something free without having large costs, right, that's the key. Make it free. That's how you win friends. There's a big hurdle on freemium is that if it's expensive for you to make it free, and it's also expensive to convert to the next level, then you're toast because it's both expensive. But if it's relatively cheap to make it free, like Instagram was, or LinkedIn, or whatever you're using, or Facebook, you get people inside, then you can convert them. If the conversion is also relatively low cost, like a database flag, like LinkedIn, great business. Dropbox, same thing. So that's a very important paradigm. The paywall, in principle, is not totally dead, but we have to figure out a much smarter way than just a wall. Right? Think of it more like stairs rather than a wall. We didn't talk about this. And what I said in the beginning, your purpose, hopefully after today, is to be a disruption. I mean, basically, it's about disrupting or being disrupted. It's your choice with your company and your job. And if you're not disrupting somebody else doing something, chances are you won't be successful because you're not actually changing something for the consumer in the end. So thanks very much. I have an iPhone and Android app. It's called Futurist. You can download it, or you can just scan the barcode. This book, The Future of Content, is quite a good read. You can get it for free also via my app, or just scanning the barcode, or just downloading over the network now. Or just send me a tweet at Gerd Leonhard, and I'll send you a PDF. And we'll publish the whole PDF of the slideshow sometime today on Twitter and on the website. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Gerd. Great speech, great presentation. Vamos a dejar las preguntas para esto porque ha merecido la pena dejarle un poco más de tiempo de lo que estaba previsto. Vamos a entrar entonces en la segunda temática, que es publicidad. Muy rápidamente, yo creo que todos los que entramos en publicidad nos damos un prontito cuenta que la publicidad en Internet o la publicidad interactiva tiene cada día más que ver con tecnología que con la propia publicidad. Y de hecho, la tecnología, digamos, ha supuesto una evolución constante en los últimos 15 años, de manera que a modo de selección natural todas las tecnologías han ido avanzando y asimilando las viejas tecnologías. Yo creo que ahora estamos ante una tecnología que no solo es una evolución, sino que además es una revolución en la forma de la comercialización publicitaria. Y vamos a hablar de la comercialización automática de los ad exchange.